So, a very warm welcome to all of you. Myself Rajan Choudhary, Professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, instructor for the NPTEL MOOC course Pavement Construction and Technology, funded by Ministry of Education, Government of India. Today we will be having a discussion on the lecture 2 of module 1, the part 2nd of the lecture 2, which is on pavement types and their cross-sectional elements. We were discussing about the key features of the different pavement structures, especially we discussed in the previous lecture about the carriageway. So, going ahead with this particular one, today we will have a discussion on the median. Now, you can see this picture shows there a typical picture of an existing road. Now, here on the left hand side you can see the carriageway is there. This is the carriageway where the traffic moves in one direction. Then there is some structure, raised structure is there, and on this particular side the other direction of traffic is moving. What this is provided, this is what we call as median. So, it is the portion of a divided highway separating the travelled ways for traffic in opposite direction. So, there is one traffic going in this direction, other traffic going in this direction. We separate out those two through with the help of these medians. Now, the median width is the distance between the inside edges of the individual carriageways. So, it can be from here to here, and here you can see these are the median shines are there or curb shines are there. Because this marking shows that gives you an indication, it creates a space so that your vehicle does not get brushed with your medians, and these raised concrete structures are curbs. So, the width of the median depends upon the available right of way. The more amount of width of median is there, it is always beneficial, because a normal whenever you drive in a night time, if there is a good amount of width of median is there, you does not feel a glare from the opposite vehicles. Whenever a median is placed, then you turf that particular surface or you plant some shrubs over it to provide anti-glare options, and this particular one separates out the traffic travelling in different directions. Urban roads of 4 lanes or more should be provided with medians. The provisions of medians should be judicious, taking into account such considerations as safety. As I said, if one vehicle is moving on this directions, especially during lights, glare is experienced by the vehicles on the other direction. And later on there is another beautiful advantage is if you need to widen this particular one, then if you have a good amount of width already incorporated in your median, you can use it later on during the widening of the project also. So, distribution, judicious decision has to be made, how much slow moving traffic, roadside development and quality of surfaces there. See, this is the two typical type of medians you can construct. One I showed is the raised one. Then here you can see there is a depressed median. These are two depressed medians is there. All multi-lane highways shall be provided with a depressed or flush medians, depending upon the availability of land. As I said, the more the width is there, what the wonderful part is there, this land is always available for me, with me, because it is in my right of way. So, if any widening is to be carried out at later stage, I can use this particular one. Other part is, if any vehicle goes out of control, it gets sufficient time to control it, bring it into control before it has a collision with the vehicles travelling in the opposite direction. So, it gives you a good amount of ample scope of safety also. Now, but every time this much amount of land may not be available with you in certain cases. So, because for emergency, if it needs to be traversed, then flushed medians are also in some cases provided. The minimum width of depressed median shall be 7 meter in case of plain and rolling terrain, and 2.5 meter or less in mountainous and steep terrain. As far as possible, the median shall be of uniform width. This is very important, because all of the sudden the width should not vary, because that creates many a times a challenging situations for the vehicles which are moving. If you suddenly reduce and suddenly increase, then it creates a discomfort to the people who are using that particular. And if at some location still you have to do it, there should be a transition of 1 in 50 to 1 in 20 must be provided. That should be there if you are reducing the width of a median or you are increasing the width of a median. Now, I will again show a picture which is taken from the IRC 86. Now, here you can see there this particular part shows here a median is there, 8 meter median is there. This is a 6 lane raised median. It is a 6 lane road. So, you can see on this particular side there are these 6 lanes 3.75 into 3, approximately 11 meter is constructed on this side, 11 meter is constructed, and as mentioned there a small curb shines are always there, 0.5 meter width curb shines are there to protect any brushing along the median curbs. So, then there is again this is a green belt which is come, then you can have these service roads also. This is a typical feature of a median which is there for raised median. Then this you can see this particular one is a 6 lane depressed median. Here again this is a depressed part which is there, again curb shines are there, this is a carriageway, you have a side access roads are there. In any case the median width should not be less than 1.2 meters. So, it says the absolute minimum width of median in urban areas, because urban areas it is very difficult to get a good amount of right of way. So, there you have to restrict, if you have to provide a median, the width of it has to be reduced. So, in that case also it should not be less than 1.2 meters, desirable is always say 5 meter. A smaller width flush median is allowable in mountainous and steep terrains with a crash barrier and anti-glare measures. If flush median is there, then you have to take other measures to have the anti-glare restrictions so that you doesn't get the glare from the opposite end vehicles. Now, one more feature is camber, is the slope which you have. So, camber or cross slope is the slope provided to the road surface in the transverse direction to drain off rainwater from the road surface. This is a 2 lane road without any median, it is there. You can see here this is the slope in this direction, and if this is the center line, then this is the slope in this direction. So, any rainwater which comes over the surface, half of it flows in this direction, half of it flows in this direction, this is drain, and then there should be adequate openings where it is taken to the side trenches. This should be the conventional practice. Now, how it helps out? It serves 3 important purposes. First of all, if the water enters through any major, any crack is there, any depression, any sides, if it enters into the pavement crust, it damages it. The granular layers, the bounded layers, the unbound layers, the subgrade, all that gets damaged in the presence of or lose their strength in presence of water. So, that is avoided if I quickly remove the surface water, I collect it through drains and take it off. So, this is one important aspect. Second is for this flexible pavements which have this bituminous binder, the bond between the aggregate and bitumen gets damaged in the presence of water, because aggregates have more affinity towards water compared to bitumen. So, that is why this bond gets damaged. You might have heard this term many a times that there are potholes which have been created on the roads, because when water stands over the road surface, it damages the bond and this layer loses its strength or integrity, and those potholes are created. So, this is another, we do not want it to lose this. And third is the challenge with respect to the safety aspect. If water is present on the surface, you do not have a good amount of camber, where water will go? It will stand for a good amount of time on the surface itself. The surface will appear flooded. If it floods, and anyway, because this is shown a real picture, if it moves over this particular one, a lot of splash and spray is getting generated, and the vehicle loses the control, because there is a film of water on the surface. So, there is a loss of friction is there. This phenomenon is called as hydroplaning, because of which it loses control and chances of skidding is there. So, that is another major concern. If you do not have a proper camber, these kind of safety concerns arises. Higher values of camber should be adopted with where high rainfall intensity regions are there. But yes, the upper is also a restriction. You cannot have a camber of a very high percentage, otherwise it will lead to the because the vehicles the balance of the vehicles will get disturbed if you raise this particular one camber to a very high. So there is a restriction on this particular one also. Overturning of the vehicles may happen if very high amount of camber is provided. At certain places you might have seen the earlier picture which I showed was having a camber or a slope in both directions, but if there is a curve, like this is a curve, then there is a slope in one direction. This is the water has to move because it cannot give in. So now the entire water has to pass through this carriageway. Then there is a median, either some median drains may be there where the water comes inside the median drains are taken to culverts, or it crosses the medians, goes on the other carriageway and then goes on the side drains. So the standard requirements we should be aware for it, and you can, once you get a visual effect, and you can say the camber is not properly maintained. Why water is there on the surface? Because camber is not properly maintained. It is an important aspect while constructing any pavement structure, that proper camber should be there. If proper camber will not be there, then we can't blame the surface because of it, that there was a loss of bond between. No, the loss of bond was not there, your camber was not proper, because of which it damaged the bond. So there already codal specifications has given us wonderful guidelines in terms. It says if you have thin surfacings which are not good, are for, especially thin surfacings are for low density of traffic, it says there you can keep a camber of 2%, and if it is a heavy rainfall region, it says camber of 2.5. For most of the higher categories of roads, it says a camber of around 1.7 to 2% is good enough, and if it is a heavy rainfall region, it is 2. With 2.5% of slope, if you give a 2.5% of slope in any of your open places nearby to your house and any places, it can quickly move out the rainwater. So now, in addition to this particular one, here you can say there is a shoulder also. So if it is, there is a shoulder also, then the shoulder may be earthen shoulders or paved shoulders. So water from the carriageway will come to the shoulders and then will go to the trenches. So in those cases, we always prefer to give the shoulders a higher amount of slope, so as to, because shoulders may not be that strong enough or constructed to the same structure strength of what your or the same dense material what of main carriageway. So you want that water to move more quickly from the shoulders. So here it says for 2, 4, 6, 8 lane highways, the cross fall for earthen shoulders, especially earthen soil gets more damaged in the presence of water, their strength gets. So at least 0.5% more, and desirably 1% is steeper. So if I give a camber slope of 2% for main carriageway, I will give it 3% for my shoulders, which are earthen shoulders. In case of expressways, the cross fall for earthen and granular shoulders, again when I will come, what are earthen shoulders, granular shoulders, when the key feature shoulders will discuss, that time I will come over it. So when the earthen or granular shoulders are there, we prefer to give a cross slope which is 1% steeper than what you have in the main carriageways. Now I talked about the term kerbs. There was a curb shines was there, and the other, that was the median. So what a curb is, a line of raised concrete section forming an edge between carriageway and the railing, footpath or median. So it's a raised concrete, specifically mainly it's a raised concrete section which is constructed to separate out. So either we want to separate out the median, we want to separate out the footpath, the movement, or we want to separate out railing. Those particular one are separated out with a raised concrete structure which we call as a curb. Now curbs at different locations may serve different purposes. Like I'll only mention about 3 different type of curbs here. One is a mountable curb, second is a semi-barrier curb, and it is a barrier curbs. Now the most common are the concrete curbs, are made up of concrete. It can be made up of stone or any desirable one, but the most common is made up of concrete mixes. Now what it says, you can see this is a mountable curve is there. Now here the height is of 200 mm, here the width is 250 mm. So this particular one, now again there is a slanting edge is there. So in case it says within the roadway at channelization schemes, medians, outer separators and raised medians on bridges, in some cases any vehicle if it goes out of control or in a case of emergency, it can move over the curbs. So it can come over the curbs. So these are mountable curbs. Now when we want to separate out that there is some pedestrian movement on the sides, we want to separate out, but how much is the intensity, how much is the movement of pedestrians. So then we can have a different design of curves, which is a semi barrier type. It is a barrier, the word itself says it barriers, it gives a control that the vehicles doesn't comes on this particular side. So semi barrier, again the design becomes different, the width is 1, here 150 is there, height is 275. These all designs are typical designs given by IRC 86. It says on the periphery of the roadway where pedestrian traffic is light. Now again concern is there when you give the curves, there is a concern with the traffic capacity also, because vehicles will also try to move away from the curves. So the effective width gets reduced. So you have to judiciously plan here where how much amount of pedestrian traffic is there, depending upon it you provide this. The barrier curves, this is the a full barrier type curve is there. Here you can say the height is 325. So there is no chances any vehicle can climb over it and can move on the other side, on some exceptional to exceptional cases. So it's a barrier type. Built up areas adjacent to footpaths with considerable pedestrian traffic, we give these barrier curves. So these are different designs. So there are few more designs which have been mentioned here. So these curves are also are concrete structures designed in different manners. We are placing many times place it on the edges of the carriageways when we need to separate out the footpaths, or always towards, if there is a median is there, those medians are also edges are with these particular cement concrete curbs. Now shoulder, the other key feature of any pavement structure is its shoulder. This is a very important structure. It has to be constructed in a good manner and maintained also in a good manner. So shoulders are provided along the road edge. You can see here also this picture shows, this is a marking which clearly shows this is the main carriageway and this is your paved shoulders. Now from the paved shoulders you can get an idea from the top. If you see both the surfaces, there is no difference in the surface. Only through the pavement markings you are able to work out, this is a continuous marking is there, you are able to work out that this is a paved shoulder. Now paved shoulder, so it serves as an emergency lane. If some breakdown is there, the vehicle can stand on the sides. This particular vehicle is also standing here. So lane for vehicles compelled to be taken out of the pavement or roadway. Some emergency is there, vehicle breakdown is there, it can come out on this particular one. Or some, even it is good enough, this is many a times if some emergency ambulance etc. requires some additional space, this should be always kept free. This is sort of an emergency escape also for any particular vehicle. In any case of emergency is there, it can escape with the help of your paved shoulders or shoulders. Shoulders also act as an service lanes for vehicles that have broken down. If you don't have service roads, that also gives this. Paved and earthen shoulders are preferred on both sides. It should not be on one side, on both the carriageways it should be. If it's a divided, on both the sides it should be provided. Undivided also, both the sides the shoulder should be provided, and both are provided. When paved shoulders are provided, that are also provided on both sides. Earthen shoulders are provided, that are also provided on both sides. Paved shoulders should be constructed in layers, each matching the thickness of the adjacent pavement layer. The work is to be carried out as per the clause. Now this particular clause states how the medians, shoulders are to be constructed. 408 is the, this is Ministry of Road Transport and Highways specifications is there, we call them as an orange book. So that specification gives you details how the different type of shoulders have to be constructed. Now, for example, if an unpaved shoulder or an earthen shoulder is to be constructed, what type of material can be used? So that information is given in the your MORTH specifications section 300, which says 305, which says that okay, this should be the material which is to be used for a earthen shoulder. When it comes for say your paved shoulders and earthen shoulders, there are many cases they say okay, earthen shoulders if constructed by soil, earthen shoulders if constructed by granular materials, then it should follow up your clause 401 of the MORTH specifications, and then material should meet out certain requirements of strength also. Here it is mentioned that for granular materials as per clause 401 of MORTH specifications, it need to have a soaked CBR value of not less than 30%. This again, this when we will be discussing about the subgrade course, we will discuss about the CBR requirements, and for granular courses also CBR California bearing ratio. This is a penetration test which gives you an idea about the strength of a soil. So, or any granular material, it says that and that the strength of that material should be at least this much value. So, when I will discuss with the California bearing ratio part in the shoulder, then I will again discuss with the CBR value part. Now, as I said, the carriageway should have a camber, and then the water from the carriageway comes to the shoulders. That may be a paved shoulder, earthen shoulder, and for paved and earthen shoulders we prefer to have a camber which is more than the main carriageway. So, the composition of the paved shoulder is mainly kept as that of the main carriageway. As I mentioned from the top, you can't figure it out where is the paved shoulder, where is the main carriageway. The pavement markings help you to work out where is the main carriageway and where is the paved shoulder. The earthen shoulder is preferably constructed with non-erodible granular material. So, that was as mentioned last slide, that strength should be more than 30%, CBR value should be more than 30%. Important aspect is that the camber and the integrity of the shoulder is to be maintained in a proper manner. If this is not maintained, if the shoulder is not maintained in a proper manner, then there is no escape which is available for the vehicles. In case of breakdown, it has to stand on the carriageway itself. If it stands on the carriageway, your effective width of the carriageway gets disturbed, and overall the complete movement of the traffic gets interrupted out of it. So, now again, as per IRC 73, there are important thing is we should get an idea that all these informations are well stated, and these codal specifications keeps on revising with time. You can see this is a one which is revised in 2023. So, a very recent one. So, we have Indian Roads Congress keeps revising, keeps even they come up with new specifications also depending upon any new material, new technology, new construction practice. So, new specifications also come up, and on the basis of the experience developed in the number of years, the specifications also gets revised with time. So, we have a very good information available through our Indian Roads Congress specifications. So, width of shoulders in plain and rolling terrains for 4-6 lane height 8 highways. It says if there is what type of section, if it is an open country with isolated built up areas, you can have a paved shoulder of 2 meter width on both sides, earthen shoulder of 1.5. So, you need a 3.5 and a 3.5 meter. So, roadway width, when you will compute, you will include carriageway, you will include paved shoulder, you will include earthen shoulder and the median. So, that gives you the roadway width, and then the margins are considered, and then finally you come up with your right of way. If built up areas are there, you can avoid earthen shoulders. Approaches to grade separated structures which are separated at different grades, so that the only paved shoulder. Approaches to bridges are there, we are mentioning 2 meter is the paved shoulder and 1.5 meter is the earthen shoulder. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the important aspect is whenever a new road has to come up, we need to acquire the right amount of right of way, because if the right amount of right of way is acquired, you will have scope for your drains, you will have scope for your utility corridors, you will have scope for your proper width of medians. So, this will give you, as I said, nowadays there are two concerns. One concern is you get a smooth ride. So, if the surface is smooth, you can travel fast. Second important concept is it should be a safe travel. Now, for safe, you need a space for it, and you need a space for different purposes. So, if I have acquired the right amount of land in terms of right of way, I can give good amount of features or create good amount of features which makes my travel safe. So, here you can say there is a depressed median which is there, and see how much is the width which is recommended. It is a typical cross section for a 6 lane, since it is a dual one, 3 lanes on one side, 3 lanes on the other side. That is why 3.75 into 3, 11.25. So, the width of the carriageway is this. This is for an expressway. In plain or rolling terrain with depressed median, future widening inside. So, what they have done, they have acquired the land, and later on, even if you want to go for more than that, I may want to go for even 12 lane highway after 10 years or 15 years, then I will use this much land which is available with me in the median. So, I do not need to acquire more land. I have whatever I am expected in coming years. This is 22.5 meter of median which is there. So, you have median, age strip is which is mentioned here. This is your side slopes, and expressways are, as we discussed in the first lecture, there are the access is controlled. Access control through traffic is there. So, here you can see they even provide fencings, so that animals cannot come and enter into or come upon your carriageways. So, fencing may be there. So, all these and utility corridors, all these facilities considering the safety aspects can be made possible when you have these when you have a good amount of ROW, and this ROW should remain with you. It should not that once you have acquired, it gets encroached at a later stage. Now, this is another picture. This shows, and what sections I am showing are the one which are recommended by the Indian IRC guidelines. Here it says a 6 lane divided highway with service roads and with raised median. Earlier one I showed with a depressed median, this is a raised median. Here, as I said, a preferable width of a median, raised median is 5 meter. This is what is provided here. So, this raised part is 4 meter, and then curb shines are there of 0.5 meter. Effectively, you have given 5 meter for your medians. Then you have given 10.5, considering 3.5 meter for one lane. So, 3 lanes you have given 10.5. Then there is a paved shoulder which is of 2.5 meter width. There is an earthen shoulder which is of 1.5 meter width. So, finally, my roadway width is 34 meter, which includes my carriageway, median and my shoulders. And then what I want to acquire, I have these drains which are there, I will have earthen shoulders, and I will have a service road also, a 7 meter service road, a 2 lane 7 meter service road. Then again earthen shoulders and a 2 meter space is there for my utility corridors. So, these are like you purchase a mobile, you need all features over it. So, I need to have a road surface which should have all features. It should have a service road, it should have a utility corridor, it should have a good width of median to avoid glare from, to avoid to have a good safety from the vehicles traveling in the opposite direction. It should have good space for the drains to take out the water, because these are wide pavements. See how much void it is, 11 and 12, 13, 14.5 meter width water will come up here, and has to move through these drains to the culverts or the nearby outlets. So, this is the structure which needs to, and see how this road looks like. Here you can see these are your, this is a main carriageway, this is a 3-lane road, this is again a main carriageway, this is a service road on this side, this is a service road on this side. You can feel from this particular one that the people traveling on this kind of surface will be safe enough, and they will be able to complete their journey in a shorter period of time with good amount of safety. Now, state highway also, it is not for national highways and expressways, even for state highways also. See, the example is given there. It mentioned that even you can have it for the your 2-lane undivided highway in open country, plain and rolling terrain. So, I can have one lane on this side and the other lane can be this side. And these lane markings gives me idea whether I can overtake the vehicles or I can't overtake, in which zone I can overtake. When we will be discussing about the pavement markings, that time I will mention that what these individual markings refer. So, here I can have a camber on this direction, there is no median here, the width is 7 meter, I will give paved shoulders, the paved shoulder is given here, and 2 meter of earthen shoulder is also to be provided. And earthen shoulder should be maintained, it should not be that it is only the existing soil does not makes your earthen shoulder. A prepared soil and properly constructed and compacted forms your earthen shoulders. So, then the as carriageway, paved shoulder, earthen shoulder, 7 plus 3, 10, 10 plus 4, 14, this is your roadway width. And then you have the side slopes, fill areas may be there, side slopes have to be gentle. Finally, this is your drains have to be there, 2 meter your utilities have to be there on both the sides. Otherwise, what happens? The utilities comes immediately next to utility electric post comes next to your carriageway. It itself is a safety hazard. If any vehicles goes out of control, it hits the electric post. So, all these things needs to be moved under this utility corridor parts. So, this gives you an example how what you expect from a pavement structure, what are the key components, key features, how it looks like, what is the right of way, first of all, what is the right of way, what is a carriageway, what is a median. These are basic terms which all of us who are having who need to learn about the road construction should need to know that what is a curb is there, what is a median is there, what is a carriageway, what is a shoulder, what is a paved shoulder, what is an earthen shoulder, what is that requirement of a paved shoulder, what is a camber, cross slope. So, what is 1 lane, what is 2 lane, what is a dual carriageway where the 2 directional traffics are separated out. So, these are some of the key features, these are the common terminologies. So, this is a beginning part, this is an informative one where we discussed about what are the general features of any road surface, specifically as the focus will be there on flexible pavements. So, this is all for this particular lecture. Thank you so much.